Dear colleagues, we start our next briefing, that is decentralization in Ukraine. It's one of the key reforms, and here is the briefing of Mr. Schimanke, expert on decentralization and administrative.
Guten Tag, meine Damen und Herren. Ich werde auf Deutsch sprechen und es wird dann übersetzt.
Доброго дня, пані та панове. Я буду розмовляти німецькою.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will be speaking German. That's why I will need a translation from German to Ukrainian. I would like to tell you who am I. I am a professor of public governance, and I worked in administrations at governmental level, as well as I was a state secretary in one of the federal land in the eastern Germany. It's for 35 years already I've been involved in administrative reforms. I do this not only in Germany, but at international level as well. From 2006 on, I work in various projects of GIZ, which is German International Cooperation Agency here in Ukraine. And in this connection, I would like now to tell you a bit of information on administrative reforms in Ukraine and state governance in Ukraine. In 2006, when I for the first time visited Ukraine, the situation was as follows. In the first 15-16 years of Ukrainian independence, no when I the country from one say follow up the It's responsible for a very important function of global governance. Realization and concrete actions. But the prerequisite for that is to create at the regional level and the level of local self-governance very powerful, very active administration. In German system, do not have these.
Auf der Kommunalebene hatten wir leistungsstarke Verwaltungen und leistungsstarke kommunale Selbstverwaltung nur auf der Ebene der Kreise und der Städte, nicht aber auf der Ebene der Gemeinden.
На місцевому рівні у нас були потужні адміністрації тільки на рівні округів чи на рівні великих міст, але не на рівні невеликих громад, територіальних громад.
Aber wir haben eine sehr umfassende Territorialreform gemacht auf der Kommunalebene mit dem Ergebnis, dass nun in der gesamten Fläche wir leistungsstarke Gemeinden haben.
Але ми провели дуже широку реформу, територіально-адміністративну реформу саме на місцевому рівні, і в результаті ми отримали дуже сильні і потужні місцеві адміністрації.
Und diese Gemeinden erledigen den größten Teil der öffentlichen Aufgaben, vor allem alle Aufgaben, die publikumsintensiv sind, also die den Bürger direkt angehen.
І саме ці територіальні громади
It is those territorial communities that are responsible for the majority of all the tasks, state-level tasks. First of all, everything that concerns a citizen. This approach we've discussed with the government of Ukraine in 2008-2009. And as you know, the government existed at that time and developed a concept of administrative and functional reform. But this reform was not implemented, was not realized. At present, we have a concept of contemporary government, acting government of April 21, 2014. I understand this is a very good concept. Because this concept brings the message I've already described here, means decentralization of public governance or state governance over the entire territory of Ukraine, and delegation at the local level, not only functions but responsibilities. In this document, it is stated that territorial communities undertake very broad scope of responsibilities, and the governmental level will only exercise the generic control. And it doesn't have any right to intrude into the local issues to be solved by local communities. And decentralization as well means that we need something to change in the mentality of people, in their conscience, because for them to understand that decentralization means that all the responsibility will be delegated to the local level. Unfortunately, we do not observe this in the minds of the local administrators or representatives of local offices, because I watched a lot of cases when even younger people, they are centralized in their way of thinking.
And this situation was also in East Germany at its time, when we were working on the Bezirk level. We had a special law according to which a lot of responsibilities and functions went to local level, and the central level was only entrusted with a global administration. However, at the local and communal level, the workers of local and communal administrations did not know what to do. They were not very happy with this law, and they were keeping calling the ministry, asking what they have to do. However, the ministry could not write a decree to every request, and we said, no, we won't be writing any decrees. Decentralization leaves functions to the local level. You should take decisions at your own independent level. And the concept of decentralization in Ukraine is in this beautiful chart. And here you have a very good and correct approach, because you cannot concentrate on just one topic if you are going to achieve decentralization of public administration. It does relate to almost every sphere. This means that this concept is very complicated and very ambitious. A minister in Germany taught me that you can do it one time only so many things as you have fingers on your palm, and this means 5 things at one time. In other words, you can count until 5, but not at the same moment. And that's why I find it very feasible that the reform was broken into several stages. And this means that you're at the first stage of territorial reform. This is the stage of working out the concept, and now you have the phase of merger of communities in order to make them stronger and bigger. In discussions with your government, we always hark back to our German experience, which lies in the fact that the modernization of public administration goes on for, as a rule, 2 election periods, and 4 by 2 means 8. I would advise, first of all, to set the priorities and then to implement this reform step by step. I want to mention just 2 problems and then we can start the discussion. If you really are thinking about decentralization seriously, you should also think about how you change the system of public finance, the system of revenue and expenditure. The communities in Ukraine, according to my opinion, are underfinanced. And this means if you get at the moment more functions, then you should also get a bigger part in taxes, excise, and other state revenue. And decentralization also means decentralization of public and state budget. The second problem is personal problem. Small communities do not have qualified personnel at the moment, and this was characteristic of our reform in Germany as well. If you hand over some functions to communities, then they need personnel who can perform these functions. How can you get them? You have to either train and upgrade the skills of the current personnel, or you should hire new personnel, because retraining is not enough. And these are the workers who should have both general education in the public administration sphere and also some technical knowledge if we're talking about some narrow specified tasks, like they should have engineering education. Ideally, when we are talking about national level handing over, delegating a function to a local level, then you should also transfer personnel there. This is a very complicated and difficult process, but and people are not always happy to leave their beautiful landscape and first of all their city's landscape and go somewhere to boundless steppes. And Ukraine is such a huge country. That in many regions you cannot do some things only from the center. But you should do this. And I'm telling you, Ukraine is such a huge country that you can only organize public administration there at the level of regions or local self-government. And besides, you should not forget that some locations are very scarcely populated, but still you have to have there a well-oiled public administration. Of course, when we are talking about metropolitan area of Kiev or the area of Luhansk, it is very different from some small village. And we are talking not just about Kiev and Luhansk, we are also talking about such rural areas that I saw not far from Sumy. If we generalize, sum up, then I should tell you that the concept by the government adopted in the spring of last year, then confirmed in the coalition agreement of the current government, is in the right direction, but they will have a lot of problems on the way. Any questions?
I have several questions. Do you know the about financial aspects of decentralization in Ukraine? Because it happens so that the most beneficial from the decentralization happened in Ukraine already, affected in Ukraine. Only big cities, they benefited from that, and smaller villages, smaller towns, they are now in a very difficult position. Probably certain examples you may give us from the Eastern Germany experience. Do you know this problem? Are you familiar with that? And can you advise anything to Ukrainian officials and legislators? The problem you've mentioned, this is not only a specific problem for Ukraine. We solve this problem by means of financial leveling of the local budgets. It means the constant conflicts. And this conflict is typical for both central level, or means the conflict between the central and the local level, or solely with the local level, or between local levels. And the decision could be only to find proper indicators. It means that you must list all the services, list all the tasks and steps. We must do this and that, understand the cost of all that, what amount of money this or that community requires, depending on the size of community, and then to ask for the money and to have money. It is usually political type of discussions or disputes Or sometimes even in my country this is a discussion between parties, because one party could support say villages rather than city, another party is pro-city party, etc. But this winter in Ukraine you've adopted changes to budget legislation, and at minimum the communities that would like to become one big community together, they should have a proper financing. And in your new draft law on the local governance, there is a provision, very good provision, that it is responsibility of the state that the local community should be funded properly in order to undertake all the necessary steps and actions. And it is good that you've taken that from Poland legislation. We have something similar in Germany. And in German law, we have a regulation that territorial communities could plead against the decision of the state unless the state gives a proper funding with delegation proper functions. I know what I'm speaking of, because we once lost the case being a ministry. At our level, at the level of our land, we delegated to the local level the functions of preschool education for children, and in our mind it was enough. It was 10 millions, the cost of all that action for me, but the Constitutional Court said that it's not enough. In Ukraine we have similar problem with the funding of preschool education and nursery school educations. Everybody is discussing this. We still do not have any court proceedings on that, because even the status of the local community from the legal point of view has certain questions. And unless we have any plaintiff, the situation is a little bit better in this sense. But if you are speaking about modernization of state governance, you must take into notice the following. Within the last 2-3 years, we worked with our government, with the Ministry of Regional Development, and we came to a conclusion that we must develop standards of the quality standards for providing of governmental services, and then to allocate resources in order to support those standards. And I would like to explain this using an example. According to the standards of our medical emergency, there's a standards that an ambulance car must be must spend not more than 12 minutes to come to a to the patient. And I understand very well when I have this standard which shape must have the network of ambulance cars in my land, in my, so to say, county. As for the centers of administrative services, it means that everybody must be served properly in 10 minutes. This is a quality indicator. Ukrainian mentality is a little bit different. That's why thank you very much, Dieter, and I hope that you will visit us once again and we'll have a chance to discuss with you the situation in Ukraine, and we will be the same pedantic approach to achieve results you've achieved in Germany. Thank you very much. I usually tell my Ukrainian partners I will come to Ukraine as long as the modernization is going on. It means that we'll see each other again. Thank you.